Yesterday we mentioned something called the Sfolim, Shnei Sfolim, and that was Os Chaf Aleph here. I just want to review because there's an important point here that I think we overlooked. And I was helped by the pictures. They have colored pictures here, and there's one colored picture here of the Mizbeach, and they tell you where the Sfolim are. So what happens is that if you climb up the ramp, the Kevesh, to the top of the Mizbeach, and you're now going from the south direction to the north direction, because that's how the Mizbeach is situated, then if you turn immediately towards the west, which in this case is going to be a left turn, on the top of the Mizbeach, on the corner, there are two Sfolim. Now, unfortunately, it's a very small picture of the Sfolim. I mean, the picture of the Mizbeach takes up half the page, but the Sfolim are tiny. But at least you get an idea where they're located. And that is on the western side. So we're talking on the southwestern corner. There are four corners of the Mizbeach. On the southwestern corner, they have these two Sfolim. And we said they were made of silver. So we're in the southwestern corner of the Mizbeach. Now, what is the purpose of these two Sfolim? And if you remember from our discussion yesterday, one of them was used for the Nisuch HaYayin, and that's the entire year. The other was used only during the week of Sukkot for Nisuch HaMayim. And for Nisuch HaYayin, the Kohen would pour the Yayin of the Nisachim into that Sefer, and there were two openings in the Kavim that look like nostrils, from which the wine would pour onto the Mizbeach. Again, not onto the fire of the Mizbeach, but onto the Mizbeach. And then the yayin would go down to shitim, which is a plural of the word shis. And the shitim are below the ground. And the reason why I wanted to emphasize this is because this whole entity of shitim is a major issue in the Gemara in Sukkah, in the sugya of Nisuch HaMayim. And who created these shitim that the yayin would go down and be absorbed below the Mizbeach? According to one opinion, Nasu bidei shamayim b'sheshis yimei breshis. We're talking about something that is supernatural, that was created by God together with breshis. And according to a second opinion, it was created by man. Now, one of the super commentaries on the Tosefta is the Chazdei David, Rabbi David Parda, and in his commentary on Masechet Sukkah, he summarizes the various opinions of the Tanoim about how these shitim came to be. One shita, he calls it the shita of the Tanakama in Sukkah Daf Memtes, which is Maisi Yedei Adam, is that it's Kamin Bar. It's like an underground ditch Shebana Shlomo b'Beis Hamikdash. So this cistern was built and constructed by Shlomo at the time of Binyan Bayis Rishon. V'lo hayu mechulalim the yardim ad hatahom And he says that the Shittim only reached the level of the ground, like any cistern, right? There's a ground level. And the yayin came into the Shittim and it was absorbed miraculously by the ground. So that even according to the Shita of the Tanakama, although it was humanly created and the Shittim were created by Shlomo Melech, nevertheless, this opinion has it that there was a miracle that the ground itself would absorb the yayin. Then we get to Shitas Rabbi Yossi, that he agrees that the Shittim were created, were man-made created, but they were mechulalim, which means there was a vacant, an airspace, ad hatahom, until the center of the earth. And that's, when you think about it, even in modern terms, that's an unbelievable achievement on the part of man to create an opening that would reach all the way to the core of the earth. Then there's a Shita Rabbi Yishmael, that the Shittim were created by Almighty God during the Sheshis Yimei Bereishis. And finally, the fourth Shita is Rabbi Elazar Reb Tzadok, that he agrees with the Tanakama Rabbi Yossi that the Shittim were created by man, but Eino Mechulalim Ad Tahom. It wasn't that there was a cavity of empty space, open space that reached all the way to the core of the universe. V'af lo hayu nivloim bekarka. Nor does he accept the opinion that there was some sort of miracle in which the karka absorbed the yayin after Nisach HaYayin in the Shittim. Became ritzpas shayish ena bolas, because the floor simply, it's made of marble. It doesn't absorb liquids. So there was no miracle here. Elamis asvim hayu beritzpa. The yayin would gather in the ritzpa. Now, I have two questions. One, I don't know how to answer. The other one is going to come up, and that's why I wanted to learn this with you in the next paragraph. What I can't understand is how deep was this cistern where the Shittim? If you hold they went into the core of the earth, then the yayin ultimately would fall into the core of the earth. But at least Rabbi Elazar Tzadok is rejecting that. So how deep was the bar? And if there was Nisach HaYayin on a constant basis, there would be a backlog of yayin. So that question I'm not sure how to answer. But what I can answer is, what happened over the course of time when there was an accumulation of yayin? Obviously, the yayin would spoil, would get disintegrated, but there would be some sort of corpse, so to speak, of the yayin. So that I could explain, I think, I'm just going to jump over Chav Beis. We'll come back to the Revuva. I want to talk about the Tavla. That's number Chav Gimel. He says, Lamata Baritzpa, all the way down on the ground level. And where are we? We're on the Keren Dromis Maravis. Well, that's exactly the place where the Sfolim are. So the Sfolim are on top of the Gag, the roof of the Mizbeach, on the Dromis Maravis side. And if you take a straight beeline down to the bottom, to the Ritzpah, from the Sfolim on that same Keren Dromis Maravis, Makom Hayasham Shel Amma al Amma. They opened up some sort of what word am I looking for? When you have a bar and there's a cover to the bar, and you have like a half a ring on top, and you lift up that cover. That cover was made of shayish, of marble, and below it was a tavla. Tavla is again some sort of an opening, a cavity. What was its purpose? Ba yardim hayu l'shitim, which literally means that people would go down. Again, Amal Am is a pretty tight area, but somehow they would lower a person down. Again, we'll soon see the Be'eri is going to disagree with this, but according to the Rishonim, Halal, and through this tavla, you could reach an open space under the Mizbeach. What was the point? And we'll see how frequently this was done. L'nakoso min hayayin shenikra sham. So the yayin that we said came down from the shitim is now below the Mizbeach, and it's accumulating over the course of time. And that's called nikrash. Nikrash means it becomes coagulated and then it disintegrates and so forth and so on. You have to clean it up. So they went down through this opening, through a tavla, and they would lower a person down. Again, I don't know how this is possible if it's an amal lama. Don't ask me any questions. And Yecholim hayu likanes letoch hashitin. They went into the shitin itself through this tavla. Somehow the tavla linked up to the shitin. And again, they must have had oxygen coming in somehow. You know, they wore masks. I don't know. It was like a scuba diver, and they cleaned up the yayin. Linakoso, to clean up the yayin. Shenikrish bo. Omnam ha'meiri kosav lo haya adam yachol likanes l'sham. It's impossible for a human being to go through this, down through this tavla and link up with the shitin because it's too narrow of an area. Elamachnis kane aroch, he had a special implement which was very, very long. Umalake midafnosov esayayin hakorisham. Somehow he's able to, turn it around and around and clean up any yayin shenikrash which was down below. That's the me'id. Now, how often did they clean up the shitim? He says that according to the Gemara, quoting a brisa there in Sukkah Memtes, this opening, which he calls a lul katan hayabein kevesh lemizbeach b'maravo shel keren, the achas l'shivim shana, once every 70 years, pirchei kahuna yardin l'sham umelaktim misham yayin karush. They would wait 70 years until they would lower somebody down into the shitim in order to clean up yayin shenikrash. And then what do they do with these residue of wine? Sarfin also b'kedusha. Since it was niskei yayin that has kedusha guf, they were obligated to burn it in a place of kedusha. Now Rashi understood that this open area was located between the kevesh and the mizbeach. I mean, that again brings us back to the whole question of how much of an airspace, as we discussed yesterday, there is between the ramp and the mizbeach. Tosfos nira shaloya zemamish ben. It should say ben. It's a mistake in the print here. Ben kevesh l'mizbeach ela moshuch litzad keren shel mizbeach. V'hinei l'Rashi mavur shahaya zeh makom nosaf bilvad tavla muskeres kan tavla mafurish b'mishnah place b'ritzpas keren jomis ma'rovis v'yu b'braysim muskasham shal lula ben kevesh l'mizbeach. Now, what did I skip? Revuva. Now, revuva is a Hebrew, again, there are many different translations of the word revuva, but we're going to work with the translation that's a window, but we're not talking about a classic window for the purpose of letting in light and letting out foul air and so forth, whatever functions a window functions. Here we're talking about a window that has a certain thickness to it. It's like a ledge. And what was it used for? It was on the western side of the Kevesh. It was 1 amma square. And Sham Nasnus Psoles. Now, I'm not sure why he mentions Chatas Ov, but Psoles, which is called Psule Amukdoshim, Adshe Tu'ua Tzuraso Klomer Shetipasel Bipsul Nosar the Yuchlu L'Sarfa. So if we had meat from the Karbanos, he gives the example of Chatas Ov, and it became puzzle, let's say contracted tumor, for example, then it was placed on this windowsill, so to speak, and left there overnight until it could be burnt the next morning. Why? Because we have to make it into nosar. And lo sosiru menu ad boker, it's only until the next morning, then it becomes nosar, and then you can burn it. And that's called ibur tsura, which literally, again, it seems like the Tiferes Yisrael actually takes this literally. Ibur tsura means that it actually disintegrates. I can't believe it would disintegrate overnight. It means halachically it's disintegrated. It's lina. We have a psul of lina when you leave the kodshim overnight, and then it becomes nosar the next morning, and then we can burn. So that's the deal with psulei amukdashim. We leave it on this area, which is called the revuva. Now we have the Beis HaDeshen, right? We said that every morning the Kohen had to clear off the deshen, the ashes from yesterday's karbonos. Where was this Beis HaDeshen located? He says, B'merchak esrim amma min ha-mizbeach. So the distance of 20 amma between the Beis HaDeshen and the Mizbeach. And where was the Beis HaDeshen? Miyamin HaKevesh litzad Mizrach. So once again, we're on the Mizrach side. Hayamakom shebo yemanichem kol boker es ha'efer shel trumas hadeshen. So on a daily basis, there was this place which is called the Beis HaDeshen, Kishmo Kenu. That's where the Kohanim would put on a daily basis every morning the ephah, the ashes of the Trumas Hadesh. Now, once again, we have to ask the following question. Isn't there going to be an accumulation of ephah, of ashes, over the course of time? So here he quotes a sugya in Yuma, and the Gemara says that Nes Haya, there was a miracle, Haya Nivla Bimkoma, that the ashes were absorbed in that place called the Beis Hadesh. You know, a lot of this reminds me of Bilam. You know, the land, the earth opened up its mouth and swallowed Bilam. Now we're saying that perhaps the earth opened up and, you know, swallowed the Yayin Shenikrash, and now we're talking about swallowing the Deshen, the Aether. Now, what I want to do, again, with your Rishus, I'm not going to get into it now, I'm just introducing it for tomorrow, is as a continuation of our study of Kodshim to hone in on Masechta Yoma, which means on the avoda of the Kohen Gadol. So that here in the Mesifta, he's got an 8-page introduction to the avoda of the Kohen on Yom Kippur. That's what I'd like to begin tomorrow. And the first thing we'll talk about is not the actual avoda of the Kohen, but how the Kohen would prepare for the avoda, which is called Prishas Kohen Gadol. And that's the subject of the first Mishnah in Masechta Yom. So again, I don't know if we'll be able to do this, but I think it's worth a try. It's, I said 8 pages. Actually, I see it's 10 pages. 10 pages of introduction, of an overview to what went on Yom Kippur. So again, if you have the Gemara Yuma, Masechta Yuma, then you don't need to buy another Gemara because it's just the next page. All right.